Okay, so do you want to start with your quote from Alan Watts, or why you're eating meat now?
We can start with the Alan Watts thing.
All right.
I mean, chances are it'll go into me eating meat.
All right. I'll read the quote from the prompt that you put. You're referencing that quote that I've talked about before, where, paraphrasing, Alan Watts has this idea that, I think it's like, he goes, man suffers under the delusion that if he were to stop paying attention and keeping track of everything, that the universe would fall apart or something like that, something to that effect. And you suggested that it's a metaphor for nature, if I'm understanding correctly.
The answer to that conundrum is a nature metaphor.
That means that your project grows like a plant, and both your attention and your absence grow with it.
It grows like a plant when you give it your attention, grows like a plant when you're absent.
Even in the absence of your... I suppose if it's reached a self-sustaining level, if it's reached some kind of threshold.
But invoking the Alan Watts, quote about the universe, it's already in a self-sustaining principle set of rules.
Yeah. Because you came here without being present. Mm-hmm. So you're sort of already, your very existence is like pointing to that there is some things that you don't have to pay attention to. Do you have any examples of that in your life, like things that you forgot about for a long time and then looked at them again and they were grown?
I think that's how I write songs, how I make anything that I make. I've gotten to dead ends so many times, and then it ends up being okay. I just leave it alone and come back later, and the dead end isn't there anymore. I know what to do, and it's because it's like a plant. I did what I could for it, but then you just have to give it time and sunshine.
Or grow light.
Or a grow light. Yeah.
I remember years ago when I was growing a weed plant, I left for 5 days, and I watered it really well, and I was like, oh, I hope this plant's gonna be fine. And so I come back, and the grow light's on a timer, and then I came back after 5 days, and I'm like, it has 2 more sets of leaves. It was really exciting.
It's amazing.
And I just was throughout the time I was gone, I was thinking about it. It's just somewhere far away, there's this little biochemical factory that's just churning away, just producing. It's like someone, a seed is kicking off dominoes that it just has to unfold itself. It's it's like unpacking its potential.
Yeah.
It just needs energy to unpack its potential.
That's an interesting visual thing of the seed just knocking out dominoes. That's cool. Yeah,
the seed's almost like a heavily compressed archive that just has such a hyperdense compression, mode of compression, that it just you have to put all this energy into it in order to unpack that.
Yeah, and it has so many if-then equations.
Yeah.
That all just activate each other.
Yeah. And it's not a perfect compression either. There's some loss in the compression, but that loss is filled, you have all these little heuristics that sort of choose, almost error correction, that help. You can start with an abstract idea of a weed plant, and then a few months later you have the concrete realization of it. But it's this synthesis between the idea that's encoded in the DNA and then interacting with the actual world. Maybe a little moth comes and takes a little nibble out of it, and so that changes the way it grows. It's this, you never step in the same river twice kind of thing. And yet it's the same river, and on some level. I guess on a linguistic level.
The metaphor of the nature plant growing metaphor. There's a quote I remember, or an anecdote I remember about how that relates to the body and working out too. There was a Joe Rogan episode with Henry Rollins, and Henry Rollins is a punk singer, and I guess he's an author mainly.
Wait, is he the guy who, like, was he the singer for not anti-flag?
Yeah, you're close.
You know what I'm talking about?
You're very close.
He works obsessively, like he never stops working.
Yes.
Fuck, I can't believe I don't remember this. It's like one of
It's pretty crucial, yeah.
It's one of like the main punk bands. I don't know.
I wonder if I should just leave it
No,
unsaid.
just leave it unsaid. And then there's going to be people who are watching it. They're like, wow, I can't believe that guy doesn't know that.
So his anecdote is about deadlifts.
Yeah.
And in high school, he got a really good...
Black Flag.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, there we go. That's what it was. Redeemed.
He's the first replacement singer that replaced Dez, the original singer of Black Flag. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure Dez lasted very long in like that first wave of Black Flag, but Henry Rollins with Black Flag like really pushed the band. Like they really put in some hard miles with him as the singer. And then he had his own project as well after that before he became an author. He had a gym teacher who was teaching him how to do deadlifts, or I don't know if it's deadlifts, some specific thing Henry Rollins got completely obsessed with. But in general, he was bodybuilding in high school, and he was a scrawny little punk guy. Is your Earl Grey okay?
I'm good. What's a podcast without some good coughing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll bring some coughing of my own soon enough.
Great.
His gym teacher said, okay, Henry, you're not allowed to look in a mirror for the next 6 months.
Cool.
No mirrors for 6 months straight. And you're going to be here however many times a week, 5 days a week or something, training under me. And then he saw the way he looked after 6 months, and that completely changed his mind forever of what he could accomplish with his life.
God, that's hard. That would be hard to not look in a mirror for 6 months.
Yeah.
Stay away from public bathrooms.
Yeah, it can be arranged with some willpower.
Yeah.
I've had completely mirror-centric times in my life and completely mirrorless times in my life. But I was bringing it up, and I think you understood why I was bringing it up, at least subconsciously, because you went on your vacation. But I was bringing it up because you were so taxed.
Yeah.
And you had to cancel a pod.
Yeah.
And the reason you're taxed is because you were working so hard.
Yeah.
And you were working so hard because you felt like if you took your eyes off satellite for a single second, you would miss the boat.
Yeah.
And so I was introducing you to the way I look at my things.
Yeah.
Is I'm growing a garden. There's trees, there's little flowers, there's shrubs. And I tend to tall them regularly.
Yeah.
But the main thrust is on supporting the creation's own sense of its own life.
Yeah.
Even within your own mind, you do better work when you come back fresh. You know that.
Yeah, that's true. But I just think I'm psychologically, I understand what you're saying, and it probably would be a good idea for most people, but I live for the extreme pushes, sort of. Like I need to burn myself out once in a while. It's like, it refreshes the earth in some way for me. I know what you mean. I can't be too intentional about it. I need to sometimes I have to reach that extreme level of exhaustion.
See, I'm in a place where my day job requires that extreme level exhaustion and regular intervals.
Yeah.
So
you already get that in a certain way.
I do.
Yeah.
And then it goes way beyond that, and I'll do like 3-day benders.
Yeah.
So everything else I do is a little more circumscribed.
Yeah.
But I can tell when I finish this career financial transition to doing other things to replace the driving shift, there's going to be that impulse to overexertion that is used to clicking on at least twice a week, every single week of my life.
Yeah.
And it's going to have to find how to apply itself to everything else I do. And then, God help all the friends around me.
Have you ever gone down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out your astrological, very serious psychological Meyers-Briggs type.
On a male v male podcast, did you just...
Bro, I'm talking about Jungian psychology, not astrology, okay?
Oh yeah, Meyers-Briggs.
Cool. Let's be cool here.
No woo-woo at all.
It's totally not astrology.
I'm sure.
It's very scientific. It's science. So... Now that we feel secure about that, what's your type?
So we're talking about Myers-Briggs right now?
Myers-Briggs.
What type of titles does that game make? What kind of...
It's this 4-letter thing. You can be
the 4 letters.
Introverted, extroverted. You can be intuitive sensing. You can be thinking, feeling. You can be judging, perceiving.
Yeah, I hate that even worse than the astrology thing.
Yeah, it's like astrology without like the cool graphic design and stuff, basically.
Well, okay, so do you know yours? I don't know mine.
I know everybody's. I like to apply models to things for fun. In the full knowledge that all models are wrong, just to see how useful they are. How much, I think that the Myers-Briggs thing is, if you look at it as something that's trying to decide, that you're trying to identify with, I think it's an incomplete picture. I think it's better at describing the types of capacities that you have developed. And then once you've developed multiple capacities, you you'll see in your life that different modes of those people come out. Like for me, I have pretty well, I didn't used to, but I have pretty well developed extroversion and introversion at the same time. And I have pretty well developed thinking and feeling at the same time. And I didn't used to. When I started off my life, when I was a kid, I only had introversion and thinking. And that's why I was the INTP. I was the, absent-minded lunatic. But no, I've become more balanced out, so I can be INTP. I've been ENTP in the last few years of my life. In 2017, I was an ENFP because I was all emotionally fucked up, but I also felt really idealistic. And then the only two things that have been stable throughout my life, going by this model, is the N and the P. And the N, I like that because, like all good N's, I secretly look down on S people.
Okay, N is what?
Intuitive versus sensing.
Okay.
I have to identify with that because otherwise I would feel like an idiot for like being the kind of person who like doesn't see things that are right in front of my face, and like having like this weird disconnect with my visual and my mental process. That's like an extreme in.
You have to have it clear that something is on and conscious and working there, just not towards the physical senses.
It's just I know I'm never going to be able to change that, and so like I try to positively identify with that. But the J versus P thing,
J versus P,
judging versus perceiving. Okay. Basically, how comfortable you are with uncertainty. Like there's some people who are uncomfortable when things are not decided definitively, and there's some people who are uncomfortable when things are decided definitively. And I generally try to put off definitively deciding things for as long as fucking possible to keep as many options open as I can, which serves me in some ways, but truthfully, not in other ways.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I kind of wish that I had both capacities to tap into, sort of when I needed to, because particularly right now when I'm just in this thing where I'm working on satellite and I'm being forced into this position where I have to stop relying on the thing that has motivated me forever, which is fun and passion, and like I don't even have to work. I don't even have to try. I just do it because it's fun. It's like you don't have to try to play video games. In fact, you have to try not to play video games. That's been my relationship with work forever, and I feel very lucky in that regard, and that's why I've been very comfortable in my P status. But now I'm trying to go. I've realized that has its limits when you have to tie a bow on things and say, no, this would be really cool, but I don't have time for it, so fuck
That's
that.
right.
And then it's like the saying no thing and the kind of like cleaving and cutting and packaging is thing. It's like, that's something that I really need to do. And I know that, in true Alan Watts styles, those two things need each other and they depend on each other and they're complementary and they're not antagonistic. They don't have to be. They're only antagonistic if you're sort of immature. And I'm just trying to mature more in the J direction. So I was on a whole rabbit hole of that for about 20 minutes last night, hashing that in my mind.
Okay, so now you do me.
So I think you are actually, I think you're a very strong I. You're a very strong N.
What's I?
Introverted, intuitive. Okay. Introversion is the source of your motivation. You seem like a person who's sort of, when left alone in a room, gains energy.
That's true.
Hallmark of an introvert. I've seen you at parties. I've seen the kind of modes of interaction that you prefer. I've seen, obviously, I think it goes without saying that you're an N. You process things holistically, globally, concepts over data. I think you actually, you have both T and F, but I think you rely more on...
What's T and F?
Thinking and feeling. I think you take in information based on your emotional reaction to it. In fact, you've said, there's been so many things you've said to me, even on this podcast, that point to that, where you just kind of go like, well, this is how I feel about it, so I'm going to trust that feeling and just lead with... The T and the F thing is kind of like, how much do you trust your thoughts or do you trust your feelings? Or which of those do you primarily lean on to give you the most trustworthy thing? And so I think you could go either way on that, but most of the interactions I've seen from you have been on the F. And then I think P and J, I think you're actually kind of have both of those. And that's something that I aspire to. Like I was just talking about, I think that'd be great if I could have J and P. Because I'm not sure you have this...
I've been forced to a balancing of the scales of both of those simultaneously by my life.
Yeah.
Lately.
So you could be an INFP or an INFJ.
I let my feelings lead the way so much because very close to the center of my self-image is the performer thing. So I don't care so much about truth as making new truths out of a performance of this moment. And expression is fueled by emotion. So finding where the emotions are is a great way to get more expression happening. Yeah.
Like you're just trawling for emotions, always casting a net. Yeah. But it's funny because the INFP and the INFJ are the counselor, the healer, and the counselor archetypes, or sometimes the advocate. And I was like, it's funny because we've talked about before how you've talked about how you have wanted to, you feel really drawn to, you feel really able to help people with to be a mirror to people's psyche for them, and have that kind of insight into people's minds.
And I've directly done a good amount of that work lately.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Too. My first beyond like getting like official technique sets years ago. Did I guess 4 before that mode of fucking with things calmed down, 4 official sessions with people that I charged for, and that was a lot of fun. I think feeling and thinking, I think they're both the same. They're both thinking to me, which maybe I'll get to this after this, where just the fact that the model sets up binaries in each of its quadrants is a flaw, I think. Well, it carries with it, I think, what I think is a distortion that comes with our present level of sensory awareness. As evolutionary beings, we think there's opposites and we think things are opposed, and they often aren't.
Sometimes it's useful to define opposites for the purposes of analysis, though.
I am wary of beliefs that get snuck in invisibly when you do that.
Yeah.
And maybe I can unpack what I think I mean by that later. But feeling is a kind of thinking. And like first blow reactions are like hyper fast, hyper dense thinking. And then you give voice to that whole thing so that you can offer that hyperdense seed of experience to your thinking mind to then unpack it line by line by line by line. But what that requires is a conscious articulation of your tenets.
Yeah.
And a worldview that's organized from tenets and beliefs at the bottom, and reactions and thoughts and the way you experience things at the top as a result of these things. And when you know where you're going, then your emotions set themselves to those things. And if you have emotions that come from nowhere, then you have a tenet at that bottom source layer that's going unarticulated, and you're unconscious of that. But it's still there producing reactions and producing worldviews in its own image, or else you wouldn't be having said emotion that comes from nowhere. And then we are a garden. Each one of us is a forest or a garden unto ourselves. So emotions coming from nowhere can also be the inception of a brand new tenet that's coming up from inside you, or like coming into being in response to something you sense that's new in the world. And so now you have a new belief, but you haven't like discovered it yet. You just like are seeing the surface tremors of it by like new emotions you haven't had before.
I like that garden metaphor. It reminds me of weeding, going through and pulling up the things that are going to choke out the plants that you want. It's like the saying no to things, that there's a kind of creativity in, well, it's like a very literal example of creative destruction, like going through and creating a kind of negative image of the thing that you want by removing the things that are around it that are choking it out.
I'm not sure I can point to any like weeding I've done in years.
Really?
Because I'm on this radical affirmation kick.
Yeah.
Like a tree doesn't reach over with one of its branches and pull a violating plant out of the ground. It just grows more tree-y, and that tree-iness like puts out some pheromone or something that makes it maximally possible for some replacement plant to grow instead of the weed. It's all positive moves at every point.
Yeah.
But yeah, what that does look like in your life is like you say no to things because you're consciously focusing on, I am going to do this specific thing at this time tonight.
Yeah.
So I'm not like I'm not rejecting this so much so as I'm saying yes to this more important thing.
Yeah. I feel like I've been weeding lately. Like, I feel like I've realized a couple of days ago that, or wait, was it last night? Oh, no, it was last night. I realized that, well, okay, so I'll back up a second. So I was reading some really interesting essay that kind of got me onto this thought about this little thread about thinking about how, like, one of the hardest things to be aware of in life is your own motivations, about being honest about your own motivations, and that people have a pretty well-developed capacity to lie to themselves about why they want things or don't want certain things, and even like why they experience certain feelings. You have an explanation for it, why you think it is, but in fact the explanation is something else. And one thing that I realized last night was that I think sometimes, like, this is in the context of working on satellite, I think sometimes that I'm not interested in what I'm doing, but in fact that's not the case at all. It's that I'm afraid of failure, and
Yeah, I understand
it's
that.
fear. And so what clued me into this is, like, I realized that fear or uncertainty, let's say more generally, fear is maybe not the right word, uncertainty, doubt, let's say. Doubt manifests as the will to distract myself, the will to slow down, it's like this thing. And so it's like a belief that I had this belief in my mind that I can only do things that I'm motivated to do. And this is a little plant that's been growing, that sprung up by itself because no one ever challenged that, because I was enjoying everything I was doing. But I feel like that little thing was unchallenged. And so what I'm trying to do now is take that little plant and rip it out before it gets too big. Because I don't need that plant there I don't need this idea that I can only do things that I enjoy. Because it's not going to take away, this is, like the whole thing about the world falling apart. It's not going to take away, if I get rid of that belief, it's not going to take away my ability to enjoy doing things and get motivation from that. It's just going to take away the ability for me to talk myself out of doing things that I want to do, but feel like I need to feel like I'm enjoying them to be able to do them. And I'm trying to pull that out, and just almost, this is, the thing about, like, fear is that, like, courage is not the absence of fear, but it's just the idea that something else is more important than the fear. So you can still be afraid and you can still feel doubtful, but you can just kind of in your mind be like, well, okay, I'm just going to do this anyway because I am deciding to, not because I feel like I want to. You can do all kinds of things you don't want to do, and that's that J thing. That's this almost more kind of like straightforward path to motivation. And I know that has its limits too. Like, I don't think you can create things that are truly beautiful by just making yourself do them. You have to have passion at some point. Otherwise, there isn't that spirit in things. But also, to be able to tie a bow and package and, like, deliver a thing, you have to have this brown wrapping paper and tape and stamped, and there you go. And that's not an artistic process. That is a executive process. So,
well, to apply my my thing about yeses everywhere, only yes, I don't, when I find that thing, I don't pull it up. I don't know how to.
Really?
I don't know how to pull that psychological thing up. I just
stop watering it.
I go underneath it to what the more accurate, more true thing is, and I focus on that.
Interesting.
And that is stopping watering it, because now I'm using my impulse to water that to water the new thing I've crafted with thought that's deeper and bigger and more accurate.
So you would prefer to just reallocate the resources to things and let them organically sort of subside.
That's right. Well, because life has dependencies and addictions set up that depend on that plant that you're weeding out.
I know they do.
Yeah. So I let life help me determine the rhythm by which I phase out that reaction. And so, yeah, in that sense, like, directly weeding things seems a little too disruptive into a complex system that I don't understand. I just move my attention to the thing that is gonna get the same stated aim better.
You're describing the patient man's approach to therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Patience. I hate the word. I suppose on paper I'm a very patient man.
You are very patient.
But impatience, well, if you've used the like judgment part to like make some decisions for yourself, then that enforces patience in some areas because you've made that commitment.
Yeah.
Which then like drives the impatience to worry the bone on like deeper and deeper levels.
Oh wow, I didn't think about that.
Which that's how I got to like immovable mover level. Like, what's my motivation? Capital M.
Yeah.
Like in the void.
Yeah.
What's going on?
As just consciousness.
Yeah.
What the fuck am I doing? I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny how that's like such an that question is not really talked about very much. So no one like really not many people back up and just be like, wait, what? What? Where do we even start? Like, where do you start? You have to start almost with, what do you feel? Like it's before words. It's before culture. It was here when the earth was just in its very beginning stages. Like, clearly this motivation has been around for a long fucking time, if you ask me.
Well, I agree with that rough first answer of feeling, because I think the present moment is the basic starting point.
Yeah.
And one of the most readily available things in the present moment is how you're feeling.
Yeah, and the present moment, it's always been the present moment. It's never not been the present moment. Mm-hmm. The present moment is always pregnant with desire. And
yeah,
it just keeps re-articulating what its desire is in reaction to the thing that came about because it desired something. Which is kind of weird.
It's very well said.
Yeah.
I need to take a 30-second.
Yeah. What was it called?
Titane.
Titane?
In Titane, this exotic dancer fucks a car and gets pregnant, and she's also a serial killer.
Is it like a half car baby?
And then you check the running time to see how much more of this fucked up movie there is, and you see that there's another 60 minutes. And you're like, what on earth can possibly happen next? I don't even want to know anymore.
She gets pregnant with a car?
A car impregnates her, yes.
Car impregnates her. Mm-hmm. Is this like an immaculate conception? Is this like a Jesus car baby, or is it like actually like a Chevy, a human hybrid? Like,
the director did say, I read afterwards, that she was riffing on some like Greek origin story, like the first two mega gods that made it and then made the Titans or something.
Like Zeus fucked a mountain or something. Mm-hmm. I think, at some point Zeus...
Like she said she was riffing on, well, I wanted to depict the creation of a new form of being or something.
I can kind of respect that a little bit. That's kind of cool. That's fine. A little bit of magic realism. But I take it that's not the reason why you thought the movie was terrible.
It was a good movie. At the end of the day, it was a good thing, coming from a good place.
Yeah.
Trying to go to a good place too.
Yeah.
But just a very unflinching eye towards human suffering and human grotesque distortions.
Yeah.
And she was using film to show you like grotesque body distortions, but it's very clear what the philosophies are that are making those distortions. And it's all this liberal bullshit. And underneath, like, liberal stuff, like hatred of man, hatred of existence, which is not something liberals do. It's just like a disease that the liberal side of the mind is more vulnerable to than the other side.
I know. I always feel sort of... it makes me sad that the word liberal has been sullied with this kind of nihilistic, anti-human...
They did it to themselves, man.
Yeah,
We had to jump the liberal label ship.
I mean, I still know, to myself, I still identify as a liberal. I still believe in liberalism as such.
Well, there needs to be a new liberal manifesto then.
We need a new word for it. It's like...
Okay, a new word. You don't want to reclaim the word itself?
I guess I'm not that interested in any words at all, because I think, as far as I'm concerned, the only value of words is trying to describe to other people. It's trying to summarize and compress a bunch of ideas into a term for the purpose of communicating, but there's not many actual use cases for me to be able to have a word to describe myself in a shorthand, because anyone that I want to talk to, I just want to talk about on a more literal, developed level, like this specific thing and this specific thing, and then you can, I guess, you could label me post facto if you want to, but I don't see the value in labeling yourself, other than, of course, you know, if you're going to form a political party, political identity, then you need to come up with some kind of flag to do that with.
Well, you need a therapist first.
No.
And then you need to change your fucking mind about your career choice.
Right.
You want to go into politics. Are you sure you're sane?
Well,
think about that really hard first.
The people who are really in, like, politics is kind of its own word that is misleading. I think that it's easy, if you take electoral formal politics to be politics, then yes, I agree with you. I think it's insane. But anyone who affects the world more than the average person, or let's say, or at all, is in
playing in politics.
You're in politics by being a public figure of any kind, by having ideas, by saying things, by not, obsequiously. Did I say that right?
Obsequiously.
Thank you. Obsequiously.
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 I like squeakiously. I like obsequiously.
It's like onomatopoeia. You're like squishing under the door because you're like, don't mind me. I'm just a puddle of nihilism. I have no opinions unless I'm supposed to, and then I have those. Thank you. It's that kind of whatever that.
Squeakiously. Yeah. That's like SpongeBob.
SpongeBob. SpongeBob is a useful idiot. SpongeBob, and I want to see a SpongeBob in Stalin's Russia. It'd be like a black and white, like Soviet version of SpongeBob. I would love that. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, that'd be a good. There should be a whole season.
Yeah.
Of Soviet SpongeBob.
That'd be so cool.
The Soviet Sponge.
Yeah. And it's like Mr. Krabs is like the capitalist, and
SpongeBob would definitely be gray, not yellow.
Yeah, no, the whole thing would be black and white.
Oh yeah, of course.
And it would be like, anyways, whatever. I'm getting off of the thing. What was I talking about?
You can get all the big Soviet movies, a lot of them for free on YouTube right now.
Oh yeah?
I saw that Stalker is on YouTube right now. Presumably the other big film by that guy. I'm sure his name's going to pop into my head 15 minutes from now, the filmmaker. Stalker was a huge art film of like the film world and made in Soviet Russia with presumably a Soviet paycheck. He also made Solaris, which like everything's communist at the time over there, so like the government had it in its mind that it was going to compete with Space Odyssey.
Oh, for real?
And get this art guy to make a better Space Odyssey. And so he made Solaris.
How much money do you need?
But they're the Soviet, they're the USSR, so they have no money, and so it's this janky ass fucking sci-fi film.
That's so cool though.
That looks really bad, but is artsy and philosophical.
Yeah. That's kind of awesome.
But this shit's for free on YouTube right now. It's pretty cool. It's
How do you know about that?
How do I know about what?
How did you discover that? How did you... That's really obscure.
Not a few, like, movies.
Yeah, I guess so.
And, like, really, really like movies.
Yeah.
Like, spend time watching movies you don't actually want to watch.
Right. That's a whole new level of...
Like Solaris. That was a movie I fucking just sat through because I was culturally supposed to if I was going to be an educated man in the world of film.
I think it's charming that the Soviets were threatened by Space Odyssey.
They're threatened by everything.
It's like...
The prime mode of the zeitgeist is fear.
There's something that's almost endearing about the way that the Soviet... They were, like, on some level, like, earnestly attempting to create a despiritualized, humanistic... it was an empire of man, essentially. There was something very Luciferian about it, actually. It was
an idea that you could just, like, mentally proscribe everyone's everything, and it'd be better for everyone.
Entirely of the mind, entirely a mental construction, a kind of state atheism aesthetic that was, like, focused on very highly. I mean, it was like it was such an unflinching, earnest embrace of materialism that there's something honest about it that is kind of, I think, accidentally romantic.
No,
Post facto.
I think
from a distance.
I think it required dishonesty at every single point to shut off the warning bells that were going off in every single mind of the nation at every point of the creation of the fucking thing. It required dishonesty. Is there some level at which the thrust was an authentic thrust? Like, I can only refer to the Rand novel We the Living, where the female protag is in 1915 or so. Like, the revolution just happened. And then, like, the second Lenin, or the second post... Was there someone before Lenin?
Stalin. Or Lenin. No, Lenin's before Stalin.
Okay, there's some, like, new wave of more intellectual communism that started to eat the first communism that was much more militant and just, like...
As it goes.
Just focusing on how corrupt the royalty was.
Yeah.
And the Rand novel We the Living depicts an earnest communist that fought in the war for his beliefs to try and make a better world for man.
Yeah.
Because of the injustices he saw being wrought by the crown.
Yeah.
And the protagonist falls in love with him, and also falls in love with just some radical libertarian. And the earnest communist who fought in the wars, like, finds himself getting purged because he's authentic.
Yeah.
So Rand seemed to see, something you are just put words to as well, that at some level on some people's parts, at the beginning maybe,
right,
there was this push to make a better world based on a vision of the mind that everyone doing this red thing could see this better world. But is that what I want to talk about? What should we talk about next?
Well, just to put a bow on that. It's almost like after the French Revolution, it's almost like Jacob and Esau, the kind of like the light twin and the dark twin, those kind of like
that both came out of the French Revolution.
Came out of the idea that people could just collectively decide to say fuck you to monarchs because there was enough communication, organizational literacy and density of public thought that the monarchy couldn't stand anymore. And so when that happened, There was a kind of
other philosophy plants were sprouting in the walled garden.
In the public sphere, because the public sphere was a creation of the printing press, and it was a creation of this kind of mass. I mean, well, basically what we're recapitulating now with the emergence of the internet. I don't want to go into that fucking rabbit hole, but basically, like the democracy, the idea that you were going to create a representational electoral. Basically, it was democracy. America was just because people were smart enough to make a decentralized network.
Yeah.
And it actually worked.
Yeah.
The Soviets tried to make a centralized solution. It worked a little bit for a while, and then it failed. Surprise, surprise, it always happens. Yeah. Every single time. It's really just an engineering problem. If you have a mechanism to self-correct, then you might actually get somewhere with this idea of trying to have this mechanistic expression of political will.
The self-correcting mechanism requires some decentralized nervous system of that centralized body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyways.
Well, I had a much bigger rant in another text thread that's in the camera right now. So I don't have access to that, but I have access to the piece of it I gave to you of we don't just need closed doors on the internet where we can privately DM each other. Mm-hmm. We need cafes. We need indoor spaces.
In the physical, real space.
In the physical world, we need intellectual spaces.
Yeah.
The only public spaces are bars.
Cafes.
Not even, though. Because cafes are following a money-making trend of making it as clean and sharp and unappetizing to sit there as possible, so you just get in and get out. Like at an example at Stobel, they put locks on the fucking outlets.
Yeah, so
on the power outlets.
Right, so you can't be there.
So you can't fucking be there as long.
Yeah. Right.
Well,
it sounds like to me you need a new business model. You need a business model to support indoor public spaces that are not bars.
Member subscription.
Oh, cool. I like this idea.
I've thought about this.
Actually, I really like that idea. I'd pay for that membership.
Because that member subscribing thing came about when, in an earlier rendition of this idea, when I was trying to solve the problem of juvenile delinquents, and the only fun...
You were trying to solve the problem of juvenile delinquents?
The only fun thing to do if you're under drinking age is to break the law.
Yeah.
So, like, the problem here is no one has anywhere to hang out. So if you could have somewhere cool for kids to hang out that wasn't and their parents were not there, and it wasn't school.
Right.
It was just a cool fucking place.
Yeah.
And that you could drop in any time you wanted. And there's like bodyguards to just get the idiots out, or the people who are taking advantage of the space, just kick them out. It's a kid's zone, and you just pay a membership so that you don't have to pay at the door. You can just drop in and out and see who's hanging out there.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea. Sounds like, well, I don't know about the kids, but it sounds like you're describing a pub, like a public house. Where the word pub comes from, public house, something that was a thing in England, still is, but it used to be a huge thing that, like, it was just a place where it was like a house that was an establishment that had a living room that a lot you could come to, and they served food, and not only that, but it was like a potluck every day where people could bring things, and it was just a place where everyone gathered in the daytime and the evening, and it was like this before work, during work, after work. It was just that's a really, really good thing. I think this membership thing is a great idea, though, because
Well, the thrust of the prompt is that culture is not able to move forward, philosophy is not able to move forward, because we're not able to talk to new people face to face. We don't have Naked Lounge anymore.
Yeah.
Basically.
That was pretty cool while I was there.
And how many other Naked Lounges have you discovered in the world? And shouldn't there be a few in every single city if we're concerned about the well-being of the soul of humanity?
Yeah.
We all got shoved out of physicality itself onto the internet the last few years.
We sure did.
And that's not good enough for the kind of problems we need to solve, and the kind of conversations we need to be having with each other.
Yeah.
We have to be able to naked lounge style, like sit in a place that is okay with you sitting there for 6 hours, see who's sitting next to you,
Yeah.
spark up a conversation that you've never...
That's literally where I first talked to you.
Yes.
Was into that exact scenario.
Yes.
Yeah, that's funny.
And I think it's a cultural requirement.
Yeah. I think maybe one reason why that kind of space is dying, is not as common as it used to be, seemingly, is because real estate has become a investment vehicle, and property has become financialized, like a lot of other asset classes, to the extent that...
Well, that's a reflection of the human perception that physical space is really fucking valuable.
It's an unfortunate side effect of that. It's what it's doing is it's making it to where you have to... It's not possible to I think there's something about bohemian culture is related to urban culture, but it can only exist when there's low rents. And that's why Berlin was the best city in Europe for a long time, between about, late 90s to early 2010s. Berlin was the place, because it was this European capital of culture that was really cheap to live in. And you got a lot of artists and startups and really cool a really awesome dance party culture. And it was this place that became such this beautiful flower because of all these cool people crammed in the same shitty apartments that it attracted money. And then as soon as it attracted money, all those cool people had to leave. So, and not only that, but I mean, those people probably got rich, honestly, but new people could not come in to replace them because you had to already be a MBA to buy your way in and live in the cool apartment in the cool neighborhood. So you could just be around a bunch of people just like you who priced out all the other people who made the place good in the first place. And then, of course, there's edge cases and exceptions. I'm sure there's cool things there now still, but it's not what it used to be. And that was, I guess you could argue, arguably the same thing happened in San Francisco. San Francisco was kind of like the West Coast's Berlin. I think New York in the 70s was that kind of place. But there's just a question of now, is there even such a thing as a cheap, urban, culturally, artistically dense locale? How do you make that possible?
Well,
Forest gatherings? Is that what we got to start doing?
I obviously feel like Chico is a potential one.
I think so.
That can be pushed past a critical point on a gauge to become a cultural and artistic and productive whirlpool. Because for a long time, things are changing a lot these days. For a long time, all those elements were all those prerequisites were loosely haunting this space. But now it does require effort, though, even more than before, because of COVID. If you want to see something, you gotta go make it.
Yeah.
Because there ain't anything else happening.
I wonder if what might end up happening is just giving up on urban centers as nexuses of culture. There might be more kind of out there spaces that are just these little nucleuses of people out somewhere kind of far flung, but are these semi-autonomous little Starlink enabled communities. Where I've had this idea before, but I think if you just have a way for money to flow into rural pockets, you could bloom some really cool places there, and it won't be expensive to live there.
Yeah, but it's not just money without people. People need to flow through those things too.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course, that's the idea. New towns, basically. Would need towns.
And there needs to be a reason for people to pass through there constantly, and a reason for them to stop there, not just pass through.
You know, I don't know about America because there isn't a lot of, it doesn't have the same level of history that places like Europe do, but, you know, like in France and in Italy and in pretty much all over Europe, or in Greece, you know, there are just towns that are, you know, medieval towns with truly beautiful buildings and walkable streets and really a lot of the kind of thing you just can't make anymore. Pockets of these kind of just like soul that are, the property values are rock bottom because there's no jobs whatsoever. And everyone leaves and there's a bunch of old people slowly dropping like flies, and there's shuttered things. So
so you're seeing Starlink potential.
I'm seeing Starlink potential for a like medieval Italian village where 100 people who are just disenchanted with the San Francisco bullshit can just be like, we're gonna go make a life here and bring a lot of tax revenue to the local government. It's gonna be real happy to see us, and you're not gonna say no to that. You know, and those are the kind of, because like who else is going to live in those buildings? Some kind of, you're either going to be a farmer or a remote tech worker. Those are going to be the two kinds of people that can, or artists, I suppose. We always need artists and cooks and doctors, a few other things, but things that are related to people. But you're not going to find like, you know, they're not going to have like, you know, like standard. You're not going to have like a car, you know, you could have a totally car-free city too, which would be pretty amazing. Instead of trying to like why not just leave cars alone and make new cities that are like, have streets that are like super narrow and cobblestoney? That'd be super cool.
Yeah, but then you wouldn't get to drive as much.
Well, you can go drive in places where there's big streets. I think they should have both. Like, I'd be sad if cars ever didn't exist, and I'm sure cars will always exist, but
I think they will.
100%. Yeah.
Okay, what else you got? We could do 10 more minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe I've said this before, but just while we're talking about cars, I don't really want to buy. I don't think I'll ever get a Tesla for a long time. I just think that.
No,
I love the idea of a Tesla. I think it's great. I support it, but just aesthetically, I think my next car is going to be like a 70s diesel stick shift.
Yeah, I'm in a. I know what you're saying.
I want something with like a cigarette lighter.
The idea of having a Tesla right now for me, like, oh, I have a whole bunch of money right now. What you gonna do? Right. I don't think I'm gonna get a Tesla right now. A few years ago, I would have, but now, even now that they're a way better product that I'd be buying, I'm with you. I need it to be more of this earth.
Same. I need to have a little more soul in it.
Well, there's a lot of soul in there's a lot of soul in Teslas.
More so than other modern cars.
Every other one.
Yeah.
Every other modern car.
Yeah.
The soul of cars is currently in Tesla, doing a weird Tesla mutant thing.
Modern Fords are literally like the Dementors from Azkaban. You step in them and you start becoming less, your life energy starts getting drained away. No, it's sad. I just think about the people out there who just spent like $75,000 on like a new like Dodge Ram. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing, man? You realize you could have bought like an estate in like South America for that amount of money. Like, what are you doing with your life, you know? You could have bought a whole village in rural Croatia, you know, for the amount of money that you spent on that truck.
You do see some cool Teslas on the road. People who give them some really tricked out colorways.
Yeah.
But it's not really sexy. I don't. I don't like I can't wait to drive one and experience
Same.
the feel of that kind of torque.
Mm-hmm.
But man, what are you doing?
I know.
You took the fun out of it.
No, I want something with like gauges and switches and gears and knobs and stuff.
And you also want to be able to work on it,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
you can't really with a Tesla.
I was reminded of that just because of this recent van thing. I ordered the water pump, and this weekend me and Alicia are gonna take the van apart and replace the water pump, and it's gonna be fun. I'm actually looking forward to it because it's been
sick.
The last time I worked on a car was probably like almost a year ago, and I was just swapping the alternator out. But it's kind of fun to make a day out of. It's like feels nostalgic for me to like go in my mom's garage and like, you know, just take apart everything and like get your hands greasy, and it's gonna be cool. Yeah.
But it's not only like circumstances and inflamed situations, it's also this huge top-down tyrannical push to get you to not use gasoline vehicles anymore.
It makes me want to use gasoline vehicles more. That's what it does to me.
Me too, I think, yeah.
To an extent.
There's a certain determination of like over my dead
Like,
body.
look, I think what would be great is that for people who just want a car to get places, yeah, great. It's amazing. Arguably, our electric cars are going to solve a lot of problems environmentally, but don't
and economically.
And economically.
It's so cheap.
Yeah.
It's going to be so cheap.
But, like, there's no reason to be hostile.
I know.
There's no reason that people who like, you know, no one's, like, trying to, like, you know, like, make sure that, like, other archaic forms of technology are, like, you know, ground into the dust or something. Like, just let people who you know, create economic, there's going to be an economic incentive for people who just want to get from point A to point B reliably to get, you know, whatever the next version of Tesla is.
But you understand that half of this country is guzzling content every single day that tells them that if you're burning a gas engine, you're guilty of, like, genocide.
All right, fine, that's great. I don't care what they think. That's fine. There's always going to be. I mean, there's cars around. You know, look at muscle cars. They're not going anywhere.
I don't think they're going anywhere.
Even in the year even when you and I are like old men.
Well, we'll be driving them.
I hope so. It's going to be the year like. Yeah, it's going to be like 20. I'm going to be like 80 years old, and I'm going to be driving like 120-year-old. You know, like some kind of like classic sports car.
Same.
Upgraded with like probably honestly like an electric engine, to be honest.
Why you just?
I mean, but who knows?
Stepped on your whole rant.
I mean, but I'd be fine as long as the car is. Something about the synthesis of old and new technology is really sexy.
Of course.
And by that point, you know, it's not going to be fun if there's like no gas stations anymore. So.
No one's fucking taking up that thing on the new car line thing, though. Every fucking car manufacturer is just trying to make their cars look like shitty Teslas. Like, why don't you go back to the design that was actually romantic and beautiful and rip off all of the Tesla's ideas and put it inside a beautiful thing?
Okay, so a big part of the problem is literally regulation. Is there's a lot.
God fucking.
The reason why you can't.
Of course.
Yeah, it's like the reason why all cars look like this kind of like. Don't you know? See how cars like look like fatter than they used to, and they're like the back is higher, and like there's this certain shape, which is this like. You know, like crash safety rating shape and this fuel economy aerodynamic shape and there's all of these guidelines to where eventually, yes, there's minor variations, but at some point from here on out, just all cars are just pretty much an approximation of this ideal regulatory design. So. And
there is a physical ideal that's happening there too, evolutionarily.
Yeah.
That's exciting to see.
Cars are becoming commoditized. They're not art objects anymore.
It is exciting to contemplate, though, when it circles back around to a truly artistic statement that is based in what we've learned about safety and aerodynamics so far, but isn't this fucking carbon copy, cookie cutter, make me gag fucking bullshit.
You know what I mean? So there's going to have to be a whole new type of thing for that type of artistic soul to re-enter the picture. Like when cars first came out, well, there wasn't any cars at all. Like that's why the first iteration of mass-produced consumer vehicles were fucking cool, because there was nothing getting in the way of that vision. There was not even economic considerations, because it was just for rich people.
Yeah, that's right.
So it was like the purest articulation of what's, beautiful. But so we're gonna have to probably wait for like private spaceships or something to be a thing. Like in a couple hundred years from now or something, it's possible the cost has come down enough that like, we can have a spaceship if you want to.
Or we
They're gonna be awesome.
Or we just get more people rich. Get more individuals in a place where they can drop hella money on pet ideas.
Yeah, well, we're all rich now compared to how people lived 100 years ago. So
compared to that, that's exactly what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just dumping all my massive wealth compared to what they had into these things that I fancy maximize my freedom
like
and
now,
joy.
like even if you're someone who's super broke, but maybe you manage to save up $1,000, well, you can spend that on a shitty, Toyota Corolla that you bought off Craigslist. You know what? That thing will probably get you across the country.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Compared to like, even a generation ago, like, even the best cars were not as reliable as this shitty Toyota Corolla is now that has 250,000 miles on it, because technology's gotten so much better. So it's like, even if the definition of rich is kind of like normative in the sense that there's always going to be inequality, and so it's not like everyone can be rich by definition, you can have their standard of living raised to a point where, you don't even have to, have that much money to be able to have more actual power.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the distribution of wealth is, I think by all indications, going to always be a Pareto distribution no matter what.
I think so.
Just because of like physics.
I think so.
So there might be like historical intervals in which it doesn't no longer approximates a Pareto distribution, but like in the limit, I think there's very strong argument that it will always approximate a Pareto distribution.
Well, I think when there isn't, I think things stagnate and die. Or that's like a symptom or something.
That's the mechanism. I mean, that's like what makes almost like the definition of a Pareto distribution, is that like some type of positive feedback. And you can't really do things like make technology without positive feedback.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you have a system that tends toward a mean and never, it would be like a person who could only ever say one word. Yeah. But I feel like, was there something else I wanted to say?
Probably not.
Probably not. I think this pointless email from Chase for Business is the sign that there's no more thoughts in the environment. That sort of
the emptiness with the little cartoon fly drawing a dotted line.
The banality as such sensed an opening and arrived. So.
Cool.